Hello and welcome to Chapter 16 in Alternate Care Systems. We're going to be talking about consulting, and we're going to start in the textbook on page 578. But if you want to flip over to 577, you'll see an example of the different settings that an HIM professional could consult in, and then an example of what the consultant's role would be on the right side of that page. So be sure to read through that. Just so you can get some ideas of some of these non-traditional settings that HIM professionals are consulting in. All right, so we're going to start on 578 under the introduction to setting. Health information management consultants work in any setting where healthcare is provided or for organizations that reimburse or bill for healthcare services. Example of organizations that potentially can benefit from the services of an HIM consultant include acute care hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, veterinary teaching hospitals, nursing facility corporate offices and or multiple facilities, hospice, dialysis centers, home health, behavioral medicine, rehab facilities, third-party billing companies, large and small physician group practices, governmental agencies, and technology vendors. Although this chapter is geared toward the independent consultant, many job opportunities are available for HIM professionals in consulting firms as well. All right, so let's talk about working as a team member. The HIM professional usually is hired to provide expertise related to documentation improvement, billing, and reimbursement and compliance issues. These areas each cover many diverse tasks that require extensive HIM experience and knowledge prior to becoming a consultant. The most challenging and rewarding part of a consultant's job is to work as a team member with key decision makers such as healthcare executives, administrators, physicians, nurses, and clinical researchers, quality, utilization review, and risk management professionals, accountants, attorneys, and therapists, as well as psychiatrists, psychologists, dietitians, social workers, and information professionals or information technology professionals, to name just a few. Understanding the scope and expectations of a potential consulting role is essential. Conducting interviews with managers at the facility provides an opportunity for the consultant to gain first-hand knowledge of the organization's perception of its needs. This two-way interview process helps to clarify the task or projects for which the consultant will be hired. Following the investigative interviews with the various managers, the consultant prepares a summary statement reflecting the scope of the project for which he or she is being considered, the project timeline, and deliverables. Consultants should thank potential clients for considering them for the project. The organization or consultant then may decide whether or not to proceed. Moving forward requires negotiation and acceptance of a contract, which normally calls for a legal opinion prior to signing the document. All right, so we're going to, I'm going to skip over to this section, but I really want you to read through these different examples of consulting projects. That starts on 578 and goes through 580. So again, be sure to read through that. It is going to include, those special things such as HIPAA and ARA training, and then a review and revise policies and procedures, or design a compliance plan. Definitely working with coding and the classification system education, and assessing physician documentation, making sure medical necessity is met, that your present on admission indicators are picked up in the coding process, and that severity of illness is shown by both the documentation and your coding, and then working with your revenue cycle team. And then within your other facilities, such as nursing, behavioral medicine, and rehab facilities, working on quality improvement, helping with RAC audits, working on MDS statistics. And then in your physician practices, improving efficiency, and then helping with an electronic health record. And then one of our non-traditional areas, a veterinary teaching hospital, doing data collection, storage and retrieval, working with their EHR, and working with databases. All right, so we're going to turn over and pick up on 580 with regulatory issues. Federal health regulations continue to increase in number and complexity. Incentives and penalties authorized by HIPAA, ARA, and HITECH means that many providers need assistance in converting to an EHR, updating policies and procedures, complying with complex meaningful use standards, interacting with multiple vendors, and managing e-discovery. Regulations implementing ICD-10 and CM and PCS provide opportunities for consultants to assist with the transition. The Recovery Audit Contractor Program is another federal initiative that can result in healthcare institutions looking to HIM professionals for expertise, in addition to the need to comply with CMS's prospective payment system regulations, as well as a multitude of different insurance companies' requirements. These are a few of the challenges that healthcare facilities face. Thus, there is a high demand for the skills of HIM professionals. Consultants may stay abreast of the changes in healthcare environment by networking with other consultants, reading professional trade journals, researching the Federal Register, as well as licensing, accrediting, certification, and IT transaction standards, and pursuing additional education to keep up with technological changes. All right, so we're going to move down to documentation. So figure 16.1, which is what's here on our slide and over on page 582, illustrates the documentation of the audit cycle. So I'm going to read through this section as you can look at this slide. If the client organization has contracted with a consultant to evaluate compliance with documentation standards, the consultant will have to research all of the appropriate regulations, accreditation guidelines, and best practices, as well as develop and perform a clinical documentation and compliance audit. The key documentation points can be incorporated into an audit sheet, which the consultant can use to review a random sample of the client organization's records. The consultant then computes, analyzes, and presents a statistical summary of the audit results to the appropriate executives. Completion of the audit cycle may involve educating those who documented the records and then conducting routine follow-up surveillance to determine improvement. All right, moving over to 582 to talk about reimbursement and compliance. The HIM professional has many consulting opportunities in the area of reimbursement and compliance, including issues of documentation, coding, the revenue cycle, and reimbursement. If the client organization believes that its code-based reimbursement is not what it should be, the organization may contract a coding consultant for assistance. Sometimes the consultant finds that the organization's coders are coding properly, but that inadequate clinical documentation is the true cause of missed revenue. At other times, the consultant finds that both coding and clinical documentation are in need of improvement. Whatever the finding, the consultant must be careful to be as objective as possible when auditing for reimbursement purposes. To guard against bias in the findings, the consultant should not enter into a contingency contract with the client in which the consultant's fees are based on increased reimbursement. So what that means is, and what our little example down here is that the client would pay the consultant a percentage of the increased revenue. The reason you don't necessarily want to get into those contingency-based contracts is because it can provide a dilemma in your professional ethics. Because if you implement practices that may fraudulently increase their reimbursement to make sure you get paid, because you're going to get a percentage of that, then that's going to cause some issues. You know, it comes down to kind of to an ethics thing. Contingency based always has you pushing over into that gray area. And when we're talking about healthcare reimbursement, that's not an area you ever want to be in. So, the initial CMS Recovery Audit Contractor, or the RAC program, identified incorrect coding and a failure to document medical necessity as major issues. RAC audits identify improper payments for Medicare claims and recover funds for the Medicare program. When a pattern of improper payments indicates possible fraud, the RAC auditors are required to notify CMS, and the Office of Inspector General, the agency charged with protecting the integrity of the Medicare and Medicaid programs, may investigate the providers involved. In some cases, a provider may enter into a Corporate Integrity Agreement, a CIA, as part of the settlement with the OIG to avoid defending itself against fraud and abuse charges. In this circumstance, the provider may contract with a consultant as an independent reviewer to meet the OIG's requirements for ongoing monitoring and training in appropriate coding. Finally, all healthcare providers who receive payments under Medicare and Medicaid are expected to have compliance programs to guard against fraud and abuse. Guidance documents for developing compliance programs for various types of providers have been available from the OIG since 1998. Compliance programs were voluntary until mandated by the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act in 2010. Although details of the OIG's guidance vary somewhat from each type of provider, typical components of compliance programs include internal monitoring and auditing, development of compliance standards or policies, designation of a compliance officer or contact, appropriate training and education of the workforce, an appropriate response or investigation when offenses are detected, as well as other elements. A small provider may not have the resources to fully implement its own compliance program and therefore may contract with a consultant for services to meet some of these requirements. All right, so moving over to page 584 to talk about the role of the HIM professional. Choosing to be an independent consultant is synonymous with starting a new business and being self-employed. A successful health information consulting practice requires a credential as a Certified Coding Specialist, a CCS, a Certified Coding Specialist Physician-Based, or a CCSP, a Registered Health Information Technologist, the RHIT, or a Registered Health Information Administrator, an RHIA, along with relevant work experience and careful research and planning. This process should begin by performing a rigorous self-assessment of interpersonal communication skills. Individuals who possess these skills often have a strong network of professional contacts in place already, making it easier to market themselves. Research indicates that organizations use their contact networks more than any other method to select consultants. Many independent consultants start by consulting on a part-time basis. Healthcare facilities often seek consultants who can provide certain services for a few hours each month or for a specific project. Satisfied clients often provide referrals. It may take some time to build a client base that provides an income that will permit giving up the benefits associated with a full-time job. Having experience in a specific profession or skill is important, as well as learning how to run a business. Although a health information consulting business may be launched with a minimum of capital expense, it is critical to formalize the business by developing key documents. The consultant should formally document a mission statement, a marketing plan, and a list of services to be offered. Additional documentation should include an objective statement of the percentage by which the client base will increase yearly, a list of clients who need these services, the demographics of potential clients, a list of competitors, equipment and office space requirements, and the number of employees now and projected for the future. Finally, the consultant should develop both monthly and yearly revenue and expense budgets. Later, if the consultant needs to develop a business plan, the basics are already in place. A business plan includes the details of how the objectives are to be attained, including budgets and other financial forecasts. Lenders and investors usually require a business plan as one of the documents they study when deciding whether to lend or to invest in a business. All right, so moving over to 586 and picking up under leadership ability. A consultant should possess credentials and experience that provide credibility, be an excellent communicator, possess leadership skills, and above all, have a good reputation. Being of good repute means that others believe an individual is trustworthy, hardworking, and honest. Leadership has been defined as an influence process. Anytime an individual motivates others to accomplish a goal, he or she is practicing leadership. A key role of the consultant is to work with others to ensure organizational and departmental compliance with laws, regulations, standards, policies, and procedures. In addition, consultants must be able to write proposals, develop process maps, manage a project, solve problems, train staff, perform research, both qualitative and quantitative, deal well with complexity and chaos, and be self-confident, self-reliant, disciplined, resilient, and financially astute. Leaders have high standards. When leaders lack character, they also lack integrity. Good leaders show no discrepancy between what they appear to be and who they are. They take responsibility and are credible, transparent, honest communicators with nothing to hide. Good leaders follow through to the final detail. An astute business person has interpersonal intelligence. This is the ability to understand other people, what motivates them, how they work, and how to work cooperatively with them. Thus, consultants must continuously seek to strengthen their interpersonal as well as their technical skills. HIM professionals have to pursue additional education and training to stay current with the vast changes occurring in the field and to meet the continuing education requirements necessary to maintain their own professional credentials. Just as essential as current knowledge of the rapidly changing healthcare environment is to gauge the attitude and ability of self, as well as others, to accept the changes. Consultants have to be prepared to listen and allow the individuals who are most affected by a change to provide ample input regarding decisions that affect them. For example, it can take physicians and nurses as long as 3 months to fully learn and adapt to using a computer to document clinical information. But a well-implemented system is worth the transition. One of the keys to successful EHR implementation is to involve the clinician users in transition. A leadership challenge that a consultant faces is that the consultant's power often is based on influence and expertise, not on organizationally mandated authority. Over on 587, learning to nurture, mentor, and encourage oneself can help the consultant handle failures and continue to be willing to take risk. Also, developing a supportive personal and professional network assists consultants in maintaining a positive attitude when difficulties arise. Being responsible for influencing others requires consultants to act ethically. Consulting involves a personal struggle based on acting on self-interest versus acting for the benefit of others. The consultant may encounter individuals who are self-serving and arrogant, those who withhold information, those who seek power and recognition, those who are poor listeners, those who spend a great deal of time protecting their own status, and those who are unable to accept criticism. In these circumstances, consultants must demonstrate leadership and not be discouraged. They must serve as a constant positive force to each facility they serve. In the past few years, newspapers have reported numerous incidences of financial failures of businesses as a result of the illegal and unscrupulous acts of the individuals in high-level management positions. In these situations, unbridled greed, the improper use of power, and a sense of entitlement have replaced integrity. Consultants, therefore, must guard against these conflicts of interest and maintain high ethical standards. Now, let's talk about what fees HIM consultants will charge. Well, there's 3 questions we're going to ask. First, what is it going to cost the consultant to provide the services? The consultant must invest in clothes and office accoutrements that exemplify professionalism. For example, the consultant should purchase software that can be utilized to produce invoices, contracts, and other deliverables. The most common software utilized is Microsoft Office. An office where the professional phone calls can be made and received is a necessity after employees are hired. If desiring to work from home, it is not acceptable to talk to a client with a dog barking, children talking, or a video playing in the background. Whether travel is involved also affects the cost of operating a consulting practice. Success depends upon generating enough revenue to cover all expenses. Often, the most financially successful consultants are those who can minimize their expenses. Another question: what will the market bear? In a market where there are self-employed consultants, there may be fierce competition. In setting fees, the consultant will have to consider what others charge for similar services. If you go out charging 10, 15, 20% more than everyone else, then you're not going to get as many clients. So you have to know what the market will bear, what they're willing to pay for your services. And then our third question: what is the consultant's reputation based on the testimony and referrals of others? So what an independent consultant charges is determined in part by their abilities, prior experience, and previous success. Managing any business requires meticulous record keeping and careful analysis of current as well as future expenses. Preparing a personal income statement that includes all of the current revenue and expenses is helpful. An individual who is considering self-employment should have adequate cash reserves to cover expenses for a 3-month period, given that consultants may have to wait for payments for periods longer than 90 days. So when an employer pays a salary, it often includes holidays, personal or vacation leave, medical leave, health insurance plans, and the employer portion of the FICA tax. Benefits that an employer provides are estimated between 20% and 30% of the employee's gross salary. In addition, the employer provides office space, furniture, computer equipment, telephone, travel, and training. A person who is in the process of making a decision to give up the benefits of working for someone else in order to establish his or her own business has to realize that business revenue must be high enough to cover more than just the consultant's salary. As a case study, consider a consultant who desires to earn a salary of $75,000 per year. The consultant adds 30% to this gross salary figure for fringe benefits and $20,000 for operating expenses. So we're going to take $75,000 and multiply that times 1.3, and then we're going to add $20,000, so that gives us $117,500. So that divided by 220 working days per year is $534 per day, and then if you work 8 hours a day, that's going to be $67 per hour. And the reason we came up with 220 days is because an independent consultant commonly experiences gap in workload. So it isn't realistic to expect to be engaged in billable consulting work 220 days per year. So 220 is kind of pushing it. You know, you may only work half of a year. You may only work 180 days. But to make sure that you're able to pay yourself a salary of $75,000, it's going to require you to charge a higher daily or hourly fee to allow time for seeking new clients and other activities for which no revenue is clearly or is earned directly. If travel is involved, the consultant must cover those expenses as well and might charge a flat fee to the whoever they're going to go work for. They may charge an example of $1,000 a day. Or they may negotiate a contract in which the client agrees to pay their travel expenses. All right, dropping down to seeking clients. The best sources of referrals are individuals whom the consultant knows professionally and personally. The consultant should keep in regular contact with these individuals. Membership in professional organizations, such as AHIMA, also is valuable. And I'll add on to that, it's also valuable to be a part of the state association. We call it MISHIMA. It's the Mississippi Health Information Management Association. And then also our Northeast Council. So again, those are good ways to network, make friends, get your face and name out there. So just throwing that out there. Now, to build credibility, the consultant should consider the following. Volunteer to speak at professional meetings. Write blogs and articles for professional publications. Send emails and a quarterly newsletter to clients and potential new clients. Join a business-oriented social networking site. Stay in touch with satisfied clients. They're excellent sources of referrals. Create a web page to market services on the internet, and perhaps hire an expert to achieve the desired result. Ask past satisfied clients if you can include a quote from them on your webpage. Develop a logo and color scheme and use it consistently on stationery, business cards, and the webpage. Develop a professional one-page resume as well as an academic resume that lists publications and work experience. Provide free seminars, and possibly advertise in a trade journal after assessing how previous or current clients were obtained. All right, so working at home. Everybody wants to work at home. It's not the funnest thing in the world, I'll tell you that. I've worked in my previous position at home just, for a day or for a few hours. And let me tell you, there are a lot of distractions at home. A lot. And you don't think about how much more productive you can be in an actual facility, in an office, than you can be at home. So let's talk about that. Consulting requires the ability to develop a container for oneself, stay focused, work unsupervised, and have healthy boundaries. A container refers to the place in which the focused work is done, both physically and mentally. For consultants who work from home, a physical workspace container has to be planned, a place recognized and respected as the office space of the new business. This space can be a guest bedroom planned in such a way that a sofa or futon in the room provides an extra bedroom when necessary, yet serves most of the time as an attractive, efficient office. Explore the tax laws with an accountant if you plan to use this office as a tax deduction. Be sure to plan a space that meets your work needs. Finding furniture at a reasonable price that utilizes all current physical space may require creativity. Dropping down to that next paragraph, the consultant should utilize ergonomic principles that facilitate comfort and convenience. For example, an adjustable computer monitor should be purchased so the top of the screen can be positioned at or slightly below eye level. An adjustable keyboard tray is needed for the keyboard so that the fingers, wrists, and elbows remain in a straight line to reduce the risk of cumulative trauma disorder. The chair should have adjustable arms, back, and seat. The seat should be capable of being lowered or raised so the knee and hip bone are in a straight line with the feet placed firmly on the floor or on a footrest. Dropping down to that next paragraph, computer software can be used to accomplish many tasks. Examples include word processing, resume and form design, and data analysis and computation, as well as producing professional presentations. Being focused mentally requires setting boundaries. Work at home is conducted in the same way as one would act at an HIM department director in a healthcare facility. The integrity of the home office must be respected. An answering machine can be used to handle personal calls and unwanted telephone marketing calls. To minimize interruptions, friends and families should be educated about work hours. A parent working at home does not mean that a babysitter is no longer needed. Being focused and productive means devoting full attention to the task at hand with minimal interruptions. If young children are at home, hire a babysitter and set clear boundaries. Develop instructions that will minimize telephone and television use and noise levels. Where, what, and with whom activities and children are permitted, how to handle minor emergencies, any medications that a child routinely takes, if and which neighborhood children are permitted in the house or yard, and caring for household pets. Train pets to be willingly and quietly confined in areas other than your workspace. Family members sometimes have difficulty accepting and respecting an individual's professional role at home. Generally, they do not know what an individual really does at work and might not recognize activities conducted in home office as work. Relatives can present multiple disruptions and expect work to cease so that their personal needs are met. Therefore, a consultant must set firm boundaries and limits with family members, as well as babysitters and friends. I'm not going to go much into office equipment. There's a few paragraphs here. I'll let you read those. But consultants must have certain equipment to conduct business efficiently. And following is a checklist of suggested items. So got to have a computer or a laptop or a tablet with high-speed internet. They need to have a dedicated and reliable phone service, usually a cell phone or a landline and a landline, an answering system and voicemail, a fax machine, and a copier, scanner, and a printer. So each one of these sections that we just talked about have something for you to read. So be sure to do that on 591 through 593. Now let's move on to negotiating contracts. The HIM consultant should take an active role in designing a work contract, seeking the help of an attorney and producing a contract that clearly spells out the consultant's needs regarding pay, authority, responsibility, and so forth. A written contract may outline the number of hours to be worked in a specified healthcare facility and the fee charged per hour by the consultant. Some contracts include reimbursement for mileage and others for travel expenses. The contract outlines responsibilities on the part of both participants. It often states that the contract employee, which is the consultant, is responsible for all payroll deductions such as taxes, health insurance, and retirement. If the consultant is going to charge for information provided to the facility via phone consultation, or if some projects are going to be completed in the consultant's home office, clarify how this time will be billed. Most consulting contracts are for a 1-year period, and a new contract is signed annually or is self-renewing. Most healthcare facilities want a contract to state that it can be voided at any time with 30 days advance notice. Usually, it is not possible to negotiate a termination clause. Clients often require the consultant to maintain professional liability insurance coverage. And then you have figure 16.2 on page 594, which is a simple contract, so that you can kind of look through that as well. The consultant should seek legal advice and ensure that any contract is HIPAA compliant and appropriate to the legal and business environment of the state and community. The privacy standards of HIPAA and Title 13 of VARA and the Health Information Technology and Economic and Clinical Health Act, the HITECH Act, have specific requirements regarding the business associates of a covered entity. Alright, so that's going to conclude our chapter. You can go over and read about more about a business associate on 597, and then you've got the trends on 597 and 598. So again, this lecture really just kind of covers the high points, so be sure to read your entire chapter. And happy reading and happy studying.